Yes, good morning and welcome back to the Football Tribe UG channel. Robert Kesakos is your usual suspect. It's a beautiful Monday morning, the 1st of September 2025. Exactly 19 minutes past the hour of 8 a.m. Here in Kampala, Uganda, that we do come to you live on this special early morning edition. The reason as why it's special is because it's a transfer deadline day, but also we do come almost an hour early to our usual time. So that's why it is special. That's why it is special. Really for this morning, a special football update. Plenty for us to discuss this beautiful morning in as far as transfers are concerned. Like I said, it's the transfer deadline day for the European transfer market or the summer transfer window. It does shut down today. Achu Bro says hi. Hi Achu, how are you, my brother? How are you doing this beautiful morning? How was your weekend? I hope you had a great one. Uh, it's in a lot. It's a pleasure to be here. It's a pleasure to be here, and it's a pleasure to have you here this beautiful morning. Allow me have our audios tested. Make sure everything does check out quite fine before we can proceed in this morning's broadcast. Uh, where we'll be okay. Looks like we're good on the front of our audios. Um, Audio is fine. Audio is fine. Um, like I said, we'll begin with the biggest headline of this beautiful morning, where Liverpool have reached an agreement with Newcastle to sign Alexander Isak. Now, that's big news. That's the biggest, arguably, biggest news of the transfer window because it's a British record transfer fee worth £130 million to sign Alexander Isak from Liverpool from Liverpool. And we know it's been the most overblown transfer saga of this transfer window, dating to as far back as July, or was it mid-July or early July, before teams went off for their preseason tours and stuff like that. When the player came out to express his desire or interest to leave the club, that's Newcastle United, and of course, because Newcastle were struggling to find potential replacements in the transfer window. How is your day going? My day is beautiful, Achu. Thanks for asking. How about yours? So, because Newcastle were struggling in the transfer window, in the transfer market to find potential replacements for Alexander Isak, okay, yes, they went in the transfer window knowing that it was a possibility that they could lose him. They did not want to lose him. They just wanted to add on, a couple of strikers, at least one or two, to strengthen their forward lines. Then, because that also was hinged on the fact that Callum Wilson was leaving the club as a free agent after the end of his contract and assisted join West Ham United. So they felt that they needed that talisman to join Alexander Isak and help bang in the goals. Unfortunately for them, majority of their early transfer window efforts failed in their pursuit for Liam Delap, Joao Pedro, Hugo Ekitike, Benjamin Sesko. Their push to sign Yohan Wissa was not making headway. Their push to sign Jürgen Strand Larsson was not making any way. They were linked with the potential move to Gonzalo Ramos at Paris Saint-Germain. That did not, hold much water. Then they were linked with the potential move to Nicholas Jackson from Chelsea, but it looked like more like not. I don't want to call it a third choice, but more like a last resort. And it did not, make much headway until they got a deal done for Nick Voltmet. Now, Nick Voltmet did join Newcastle from Stuttgart in a deal worth 75 million euros plus another 5 million euros in expected add-ons, taking the total deal to about 80 million euros, which means it's also a record transfer for Newcastle in terms of signing a player. And now they make a record Premier League sale with £130 million for Alexander Isak. According to David Austin, he did say that Newcastle United reached total agreement with Liverpool to sell Alexander Isak. Deal for the 25-year-old worth £130 million. Newcastle with solidarity, £125 million cost. to Liverpool. Medical to be done on Monday before deadline switch for the Swedish international. Looks like Liverpool have won their race, have won their man. They've been patient all throughout the summer. They made one official bid that was worth 110 million pounds earlier on in the summer, and that was, equivocally, that was unequivocally turned down by, Newcastle, saying that was below their valuation. And at one point, they did say they did not see his valuation or the conditions for a transfer being met. Well, they've now been met, and things are really, really moving fast. Things are really, really moving fast. Original aim for Newcastle was to at least get 150 million pounds, but Liverpool's first bid was 120. Sorry, Liverpool did bid 120 million pounds, and of course that is in addition to 10 million pounds more to their first bid that was 110 million pounds. So then a compromise was then reached down the road of negotiations at 125 million pounds. That means it costs at least 15 million pounds more than what Florian Wirtz did, cost. Getting Isak, that is Florian Wirtz Enjoyer. Is that your name? Yes, he calls himself Florian Wirtz Enjoyer. Says getting Isak. I mean, this is a marquee signing for Liverpool. They do not come any better than that. We're talking about a Premier League proven player who I think is only behind Mo Salah and Braut Erling Haaland for the seasons he's been in the Premier League. Maybe possibly Oli Watkins in terms of total number, of course, but I think he is still ahead of him because when you look at his first campaign when he just joined Newcastle, that was 2022-2023, he scored 10 goals, I think 11 goals in 22 appearances in the Premier League, provided one assist. Then the subsequent season, 2023-2024, that's when he started, shining bright like a knight in armor, scoring a ton of 23 goals. I think actually it was 21 goals and provided 3 assists, giving him goal involvement of 24 in that campaign. And he never looked back. Last season was the best in Newcastle jersey. He scored 23 goals, provided 6 assists, giving him a 29 goal involvement. And of course, we all know the conversations that went on when he informed the club that he wanted to leave and explore his options. However, having already agreed to personal terms with Liverpool, he was only hell-bent or intent on joining the Reds. We did come into this season already with Liverpool being the favourites to win the Premier League title, given that they are the reigning champions, but also given the kind of work that they've been able to do in the transfer window. Earlier on, of course, bringing in Jogi Mamadashvili, the goalkeeper from Sevilla, bringing in Milos Kakes from AFC Bournemouth, bringing in Jeremy Frimpong from Bayer Leverkusen, as well as Florian Wirtz from the same side, which was a record transfer deal for Liverpool, 100 million pounds guaranteed plus 16.5 million pounds in expected add-ons. So those were good additions. They took it a notch higher and signed Hugo Ekitike from Eintracht Frankfurt in a deal worth 79 million pounds, 69 million pounds being the guaranteed fees, plus a further 10 million pounds to come in add-ons. Hugo Ekitike has had a bright start to his Premier League career, having scored 3 goals in 3 games. That's if you do consider the Community Shield. Yesterday, he was unable to get himself on the score sheet as Liverpool beat up against Arsenal by 1-0. That goal scored by Dominic Szoboszlai from the set piece or from the free kick. Brilliant free kick. One of the best that you will see as far as this season is concerned. So far, one of the best goals you will get to watch. Of course, maybe the debate will be between his goal and that of Richarlison against Burnley, which one is better. But I think a free kick is always one to enjoy for me, given the kind of technique, the speed at which that ball travels before it hits the back of the net. So Liverpool, like I said, of course they've had some major outgoings while they've been strengthening their squad. Players like Luis Diaz cannot be ignored. They have left the club. Unfortunately, we all know one too well about the demise of Diego Jota. Quite very, very unfortunate. But may his soul rest in peace, alongside with his brother Andre Silva, and then Alexander Arnold was one of the key departures from that Liverpool side. The substitute goalkeeper, Colin Kelleher, did leave for Brentford. And I think he's had a good start at Brentford over there at the GTEC Stadium. And then, which other player am I forgetting? Yes, Joel Quensha from that Liverpool backline also did leave. And that's why Liverpool are stepping up their efforts or their push to sign Crystal Palace's McKay. McKay did score a goal yesterday as Crystal Palace beat up against Aston Villa by 3-0. He scored their second goal of the day. Beautiful goal that he did score also in that particular game. So Liverpool are really to push hard. For me, my criticism has always been that while Liverpool remain the favorites, they do have issues to work on. I thought more than anything, they do need to sign a defender. And their pursuit for McGahey looks a bit positive. It's dependent on Crystal Palace to make that decision to decide whether they are open to losing the player for free or they let him go now. Because Liverpool have already agreed to personal terms with McGahey. They put in a bid worth £35 million, and Crystal Palace came back with a counter that they want £35 million as guaranteed fees plus £5 million as expected add-ons, as well as a future 10% sell-on clause, which I find quite very reasonable for a player who is now turned 20. He's now turned 25 years of age. McKay. So really, if I'm Liverpool, I'm paying that. I'm paying that. I'm paying that without hesitation, because the structure of the add-ons, you can make them maybe a bit difficult. You see, bid turn at 25 on July 13th. So when you look at the structure of add-ons, that one you can play yourself around it. You can find a way to play around it and still get it your way. But I think, given the quality and the value that he does promise, I think he is a very, very good player and worth that money. For as long as Liverpool can guarantee him, regular football, bearing in mind that it is a World Cup season, that at the end of the season, that during the course of the season, all players are going to want to play, because at the end of the season, they want to be summoned by their respective international teams to represent them at the World Cup for those that will be making the tournament. Of course, we've already seen signs of that. However, we are going into the international break, and unfortunately for some of these players, they are going to miss out. Some of those that have been summoned, players like Ibrahim Konate did come off injured yesterday. That came between Liverpool and Arsenal and was replaced by Joe Gomez. Then on the side of Arsenal, you had William Saliba go off in as early as the 50th minute of the game, was withdrawn for Christian Mosquera. And then, so yeah, those are some of the injuries that countries have to contend with. Ben White at Arsenal is equally injured. So, but those things happen. But during the overall course of the season, that is going to be the aspiration of most players to go and represent their respective national teams. But yeah, it's big transfer news that Liverpool have reached an agreement on a deal to sign Alexander Isak. And yeah, that is being pursued. Then quickly, let's pick Manchester United, because Manchester United are also very, very busy in the market. They want some outgoings. They are yet to make a resolution on Anthony as well as Jadon Sancho, but those deals are equally being discussed. Emi Martinez has reaffirmed to Aston Villa that he wishes to leave the club and join Manchester United. Clear message once again after the player did agree to personal terms with the Red Devils. The Red Devils were also interested in signing Sene Lamens from Royal Antwerp, but it looks like they are now prioritizing a deal for Emi Martinez. He's a player that for whom they had already approached Aston Villa earlier on in the transfer window and offered a loan deal. However, Aston Villa quickly turned that down. And now Aston Villa also have approached Royal Antwerp. Should they lose Emi Martinez, they want to sign Seni Lemons, should they lose Emi Martinez. That's the 23-year-old Belgian goalkeeper at Royal Antwerp that they would wish to bring in if all goes well. So it's going to be a very, very busy transfer deadline day. Then also, Aston Villa continue to push to try and sign Jordan Sancho from Manchester United. Negotiations between Aston Villa and Manchester United continue. That's according to Fabrizio Romano. It's a separate deal from that of Emi Martinez, but both in conversation trying to get both agreements done. Remember, Jordan Sancho has been a bit of a stubborn one to deal with. A lot of clubs have come in for him, but he has declined to make the move. At the very last, I think, being AC Roma that had reached an agreement on a deal in principle with Manchester United, but he did turn down a move to Italy, and he said no way, he is staying behind for now, and that's a deal that looks to be, or is one of those that will be resolved on the transfer deadline day, or otherwise then nothing will be done. Then AC Milan are also confident or to agree terms with Liverpool for Joe Gomez. Yes, he did come on yesterday for Liverpool, but AC Milan remain in pursuit to try and sign the 28-year-old, 28, 29, thereabout, for Joe Gomez. My challenge with him is that he plays very few games in a season. Oftentimes, he does struggle with injuries. But his talent is one without a question. He's a very, very talented player, I must acknowledge. Then there's also that pending situation that is yet to be resolved between Chelsea and Bayern Munich over a deal for Nicholas Jackson. Now, what did happen yesterday or the other day was Nicholas Jackson, Chelsea, and Bayern Munich reached an agreement to send Nicholas Jackson out on loan at Bayern Munich. So the player was granted permission to travel for his medicals. Now, while he was in transit, or no sooner had he arrived in Germany than he did receive that news that he was being summoned back. And from what we are getting, of course, Chelsea were playing up against Fulham over the weekend, the one that came by 2 goals to nil. It was during that game that the player in Liam Delap suffered a thigh injury and is expected to be out for about 6 to 8 weeks, and that is what compelled Chelsea to try and foil that deal of Nicholas Jackson to Bayern Munich. Now, once they chose to foil that deal of Nicholas Jackson to Bayern Munich, they said the only way that they are now sanctioning the deal is if it is a permanent transfer for Bayern Munich. Now, last I checked, according to Florian Petrenberg, Bayern Munich were totally pulling out of, Bayern Munich were totally pulling out of that deal, saying no, and they were turning their attention to try and sign Ademola Lookman from Atlanta, So that is what is happening. Of course, for the player, I mean, he must be furious. You told the player his surplus requirements is unwanted, and he's gotten himself what would arguably be a dream move to Bayern Munich, and then suddenly you want to fold it back, and you want to fold the deal just because you had the player injured. And then yesterday, by the close of yesterday, Chelsea had reached an agreement with Sunderland to recall their striker Mark Gui. They did recall that one he had just been recently sent there. I bet he had barely kicked the ball for them. He had been sent there on loan, and now they recalled him to return to the club, and that is actually also happening. So Chelsea are, all over the place, but they also did agree a deal to sign Facundo Benanote from Brighton and Hove Albion. The left-footed young winger is going to spend at least a season-long loan at Chelsea. There's no obligation to buy. Still speaking transfers, Hamburg SV are considering a surprising loan move for Fabio Vieira on deadline day. Talks have taken place with a decision expected on Monday morning. West Ham are also keen on the 25-year-old attacking midfielder but Hamburg SV are on it. That's confirmed. That's according to Florian Plettenberg. Interest in Vieira is independent of the imminent transfer of Albert Asambe Lokonga on a permanent deal. So that one was also happening, has been in the pipeline for a good couple of days, that Hamburg SV had approached Arsenal to sign Albert Asambe Lokonga. And according to Florian Plettenberg, in fact, he does continue to say later that Albert Asambe Lokonga had completed his medical at Hamburg SV. Results expected tomorrow morning, which is today morning, to see whether a deal is finalized for the 25-year-old Belgian international. For you leaving Arsenal. Speaking of Fabio Vieira, a couple of clubs are really interested in his services. West Ham inclusive. Stuttgart is one of those, and now Hamburg SV do join. Two Premier League clubs. I do not know which other one other than West Ham had also expressed interest in signing Fabio Vieira, but the expectation is that he will be leaving the club before the close of the transfer window. Olympique Marseille are interested in signing Arsenal's Alexander Zinchenko, but his wages are still a small thorn in Arsenal's foot in trying to move on the player. So that one is becoming a bit difficult. Then also there are rumors. There were rumors yesterday linking Angelo Castilla with a move. Sorry, Angelo Stiller with a move to Manchester United from Stuttgart. But according to Sky German, at the moment, those rumors are wide of the mark. So, but like I told you, Bayern Munich chose to pull out of the rest of the deal for Nicholas Jackson, and the player is expected to fly back alongside his agent, Ali Bratt, to fly back to England. But anyway, we're talking about players that signed very long-term contracts. So anything can happen, and with them, Chelsea can do with them as they please. They can arm twist them, make twists and turns. But yeah, now Bayern Munich will turn their attention on trying to sign Ademola Lookman, although Tottenham Hotspurs have also expressed interest in signing the 27-year-old Nigerian forward who are from Atlanta, also formerly at Fulham. So that deal do expect it to happen. I do expect lots of things to happen as the transfer deadline closes in. Anyways, okay, this is an exclusive just coming in right now from David Austin. It's an exclusive. He says Real Betis have reached an agreement with Manchester United to sign Antony on a permanent transfer deal. Real Betis initially wanted a straight loan, but deadline the deal for the 25-year-old winger is worth 25 million euros package plus a future 50% sell-on clause, no termination payment to the Brazilian international. Now, this is what happened in regards to this Antony deal. Real Betis had initially agreed a deal with Manchester United. Now, and the player had been granted permission to travel for his medicals. Now, once the player traveled to undergo his medicals, during negotiations on wages, it turned out that his wages were so high. And because his wages were so high, Real Betis wrote back to Manchester United and said, look, we are terminating this deal unless you can discuss maybe a severance package or a termination payment to Antony, and then we can proceed. Manchester United said no to that. And now a new deal has been agreed. So that means in the future, if let's say 2 years down the road, Real Betis sell Antony for maybe for 50 million euros, that means that Manchester United get at least a 12.5 million euros out of that, because usually how future sell-on clauses work is that the percentage sell-on clause is on the profit. So the initial transfer fee is deducted, and whatever remains is what is split, and depending. So that one is also incoming. So looks like where Betis will get their man eventually. One of the key deals to really look at or to keep eyes on is one of the key things to deals to look at is Alexander Zinchenko at Arsenal. Fabio Vieira is one to watch. Who else? Some of those I do not know whether Arsenal. Anyway, no bids have come in for Gabriel Jesus, but I wouldn't be surprised if something later on came in and Arsenal decided to sanction a deal. I wouldn't be totally surprised if that were to be the case. But the player is continuing with his recovery. He's back on the grass, recovering from that anterior cruciate ligament injury. Then Piero Hincapi. This one is currently finalizing his Arsenal move after arriving in London yesterday. It's a loan deal with a buy option. Now, the reason as to why it wasn't made an obligation to buy, in principle, behind closed doors, it's under gentleman's agreement is for Arsenal to sign him permanently. It's an obligation. But when it comes to the particulars of the paperwork, it's an option to buy. The reason being is because according to the profit and sustainability rules of the Premier League, if it is an obligation for you to buy, then that deal is registered as a permanent move for the player in this current financial year. And yet, Arsenal can stay on the right side of these things when it comes to the profit and sustainability rules, as well as those of the financial year fair play rules. What needs to be done is what they want to do is have the deal registered on next year's financial book. So it's a loan and with an option to buy the 23-year-old Ecuadorian international for 52 million euros. So that one is equally happening. Remember, his release clause was 60 million euros, and Arsenal managed to negotiate for a slightly lesser fee. So I mean, it's a good deal. Another good deal negotiated by Andre Bata, who I think has done tremendously, really well in as far as this transfer window is concerned. Then the other key news is that's regarding the Manchester City goalkeeper Ederson Moraes, because a deal has been brokered between Fenerbahce and Manchester City for the transfer of the 32-year-old Brazilian goalkeeper in a deal worth about 13 to 14 million euros, according to Fabrizio Romano. Those figures could be subject to change, depending on what source you may be reading or from to sign him. So personal terms are already agreed with his agent, George Mendes, and that means the player is on the move. What does that mean? It means that Manchester City are going to turn their attention to signing Gianluigi Donnarumma from Paris Saint-Germain. They've already agreed to personal terms on the transfer of the 26-year-old Italian goalkeeper, and according to an exclusive by Nicolo Schira, he does say Gianluigi Donnarumma is one step away to Manchester City. From PSG for about 20 to 25 million euros, agreed personal terms for a contract until June 2030, 13 million euros per year, plus 2 million euros in bonuses. We've all seen that Manchester City have had a bit of a shaky start to the Premier League season, losing 2 of their opening 3 games, having beaten up against Wolverhampton Wanderers by 4 goals to 0, before going on to lose to Brighton yesterday by 2 goals to 1, and then to Tottenham Hotspurs a weekend earlier by 2 goals to 0. So it's been a bit of a shaky start for Manchester City season, and they are, they are strengthening. Now that's the 3rd goalkeeper, by the way, they've signed in this transfer window. I remember they signed James Trafford earlier on. They signed James Trafford from Burnley. They were resigning him because he was a former Manchester City player who, having left them in 2023 to join Burnley, who were under the charges of recent company at the time. Habib Nasser says allowing 70 minutes for Martinelli is a crime. Let's discuss Habib Nasser's comment. Yes, the other goalkeeper they did sign was Marcus Bentinelli from Chelsea as a third choice goalkeeper. So that means right now they have Marcus Bentinelli, they have James Trafford, they have Stefan Ortega, who they are open to letting go, but they are bringing in Gianluigi Donnarumma, which means he will be the number one ahead of James Trafford, who has been starting. Had a bit of a horrendous performance against Tottenham Hotspur. Habib Nasser says starting Martinelli for 70 minutes is a crime, or is criminal. He speaks to that reference to Arsenal's loss against Liverpool. I thought again he had a bit of an unconvincing performance yesterday. On the day, again, Arsenal looked to predominantly move their ball through the right wing where Noni Madueke was predominantly in that first half. That's where majority of the action came in. I wasn't against the idea that Martinelli should start, but maybe like you and maybe a couple of others out there, Arteta made me angry. I think just like you and a couple of others out there must be feeling the same way, because what I did feel personally was that maybe some of these changes came a little too late. I do not know. I do not know who told managers that they have to wait until the 70th minute, until the 80 something minutes to try and make some changes or impactful changes. Because last weekend against Leeds United, he made those changes quite early, as early as the 60th minute. He had started already to make some of those changes. I do not know why he. But anyway, the mentality usually for him going to Liverpool is to try and not lose in the first place. That's always the principle. And personally, I did not agree to the idea of him starting three midfielders in Mikel Merino, Martin Zubimendi, and Declan Rice. I mean, I understand maybe, I don't know, did he just want to give Mikel Merino some minutes? I just did not get it, because that midfield, as dominant as they had been in the first half, in the second half, they weren't good. It wasn't good enough. Liverpool dominated affairs, and they lacked creativity through the middle of the spine. So why not start Eze before the second half? I mean, maybe I understand his sort of bit of fears when it comes to Ebeleche Eze. Although all of us would have loved him to start that game, given that he needs no introduction to the Premier League. But because he's only trained with the team for about 4 or 5 days, he felt that he hasn't gelled in terms of what the team plays. But I do not think it's rocket science. I do not think for a player of Ebeleche Eze's intelligence that should be taking him ages, to adapt to how the team plays. But maybe he thought Anfield was too big a stage to try and test that out. Given that Martin Odegaard was coming off an injury, my feeling was that yes, maybe if Martin Odegaard doesn't get to start, maybe Ethan Nwaneri should start. Again, I was having a debate with multiple people, and they were saying maybe Ebeleche Eze should start in that role of Martin Odegaard, and I was telling them that while I'm open to the idea, and it should be an exciting idea, and we'll see how he fares in that Martin Odegaard role, my fears were that he wasn't going to start him simply because he's never played with this Arsenal team before. So maybe while you knew what to expect of the player in Ebeleche Eze, Mikel Arteta didn't know what to expect when it comes to the mixed zone of how he will, sort of cooperate with his teammates and how he would fit with them. So that was the reservation. Hi Pedri, good morning. Just feel bad for Ektike. The little bird has been freed from the evil monkeys, and Alexander Isak to Liverpool is here we go. Yes, that's the topic we kicked off with. You say I think Cody Gakpo should remain on the left wing. Okay, I don't know. One of those will have to be sacrificed. Unfortunately, either Cody Gakpo or Hugo Ektike, one of them is going to be sacrificed to be starting off the bench. So Habib Nasser says 20 minutes. Eze is little versus 17 minutes. Sleepy Brazilian Merino. I mean, that's just it. No, uh, like I said, a lot of people are going to feel hard done by those kinds of decisions because they felt while for me it was okay for Martinelli to start. It is true that I felt he should have maybe Eze should have come on much earlier, maybe as early as the start of the second half. I thought it would have given them Arsenal more going forward because in the second half they didn't look good, or or after the first 10-15 minutes of the game. Then also you talk about Cody Gakpo, and I'm thinking to myself, yeah, one of them has to be sacrificed. It is what it is. It is what it is, you know. Uh, then Alexander Isak, yeah, that deal is done. Player is said to undergo his medicals. Guys, have an emergency. So you either excuse me for a moment for me to step away from the broadcast, or I end it here. But anyways, just excuse me. This is an unavoidable. It's something. It's an emergency that I need to tend to before I return to the screen. So allow me. Just keep it here. Roberta, how? Okay. Okay, we are back. We are back. Sorry about that. Sorry about that. Like I said, it was an emergency. I couldn't avoid staying away from it, given what I wanted to do or what I want to do for purposes of this broadcast. But let's continue with the conversation with those that maybe are free to rejoin us. Otherwise, yes, we're still talking about Arsenal's, Mikel Arteta's selection for his team against Anfield. Every time he goes to Anfield, he goes there with cold feet. Now, one would argue that it's based on the historical context that they've never won there since September 2012 when they beat up against Liverpool by 2-0. I think Santi Cazorla and Olivier Giroud were the goal scorers in that game. Whereas that in itself is understandable. I mean, you ought to take risks. You ought to take risks. And oftentimes, the only risks that Mikel Arteta does take are the unnecessary ones. So in this particular case, I do not understand why down the spine you do not start with a more attack-minded midfielder when you have two midfielders that are already defensive-minded, who you asked to play with a bit of reservation going forward. So you had Martin Zubimendi alongside Declan Rice, in sort of a double pivot with Mikel Merino in that game. So should it be that once you do not have Martin Odegaard, you're not going to start with an attacking midfielder? So I thought it was cowardly when I looked at that start 11. Noni Madueke looked good in the first half. He was, I think, the most threatening player for the Arsenal side. Victor Gyökeres, I do not have much to apportion blame on him, given the overall context of the game, because, like I said, it was a game of two halves. Arsenal dominated the first half, Liverpool dominated the second, and it was one moment that won the fixture. That brilliant free kick by Dominic Szoboszlai. But yeah, I do understand your frustrations, Habib Nasser, when you talk about Gabriel Martinelli maybe spent a little too long on the pitch, should have been withdrawn. But for me, I remember we were having discussions while watching this game, and I said, if I'm Mikel Arteta, I'm going into either at the start of the second half or early, maybe 15 minutes into the second half, and I'm making 3 changes. And those 3 changes included withdrawing Gabriel Martinelli for Ebeleche Eze, withdrawing Mikel Merino to bring on somebody like Ethan Nwaneri. Then the other change I hope we would make was Noni Madweke, to bring on somebody else. Because I was thinking if Martin Odegaard is fit to play, he should come on into that number 10 role, and then you have Eze on the left, and then you push Ethan Nwaneri on the right way. But at least those changes needed to be made early, to give themselves a chance. But it did not happen that way. It did not happen that way, unfortunately. So that's basically just what it was. It did not happen on a timely manner in the way we had hoped it would happen. But it is what it is, and Arsenal sort of ended up losing the game. Arsenal ended up losing the game. So we'll have to wait and see. We'll have to wait and see how the cup. I mean, they ended up losing. There is no harm in losing, but the manner in which they lost will be one that they are disappointed in. Like I said last night, if I had to apportion particular blame on that loss, is on David Raya because of the goal he conceded, because that's the third time in my recent memory that I've seen him concede that kind of goal. One would say it's a very immaculate free kick, but I've seen what he does: set up the wall on one side of the goal and then move 3/4 away on the other side. I never understand the logic because it never seems to work. That's why I don't understand. I do not believe it's one that can work. He's considered a similar goal yesterday, one against Manchester United, Bruno Fernandes free kick, another against Emerson at West Ham last season. So and he never learns from it. I do not know what Inak is telling him to do when it comes to free kicks. I don't know. I just don't know. I just don't get what the point is in that. And given yesterday's kind of free kick, first of all, it was from distance. And from that distance, you're very rest assured that the player is going to have the space to curl that ball or to lift that ball above the wall. Now, usually, remember, the ball has to go above the wall and then maybe it takes a dip into the goal. Now, once you have that kind of distance that Szoboszlai had yesterday, it's more plausible than opposed to when it is closer to the goal. Because usually when it is closer to the goal, if he manages to lift it over the wall, chances are it ends up high over the bar, So, and yet for some reason, David Raya continues to do things the same way, which I believe is not the right way when it comes to keeping his goal against free kick. So if there's anybody that needed to be blamed yesterday, is particularly David Raya. 2 is the manager because of the delayed changes. Those changes were late. He wasn't pragmatic enough. Even in the starting 11, it looked cowardly for me. That those 3 defensive midfielders, you do not need to make that. So what happens if you get to play Real Madrid again in the UEFA Champions League? What happens if you meet a Barcelona? What happens if you meet a PSG again? Are you going to be conservative just because you're playing away from home? I mean, no. Again, one, you're playing a game where Mikel Merino is slow on moving that ball. And what you want is to try and exploit any spaces left by Liverpool at the back as quickly as possible. So you needed a person that could move that ball much quicker. And that's what Ebeleche Eze would offer you. But more importantly, that's what Ethan Nwaneri can offer you. We saw him do that against Leeds United. The message to him should be simple: move the ball much quicker, release the ball much quicker. So, but anyways, it's just what it is. Arsenal ended up on the losing end against the reigning champions and title favorites. While it's a loss that you could take on, or you could take, or you could stomach. Unfortunately, it's one that I hope it's one that teaches him more lessons than not. Because overall in possession, for example, or some of the key statistics that you wanted to take away, and Liverpool overall possession was 49% compared to Arsenal's 51%. Shots were 6 versus 2. Shots on target, but these are first half statistics, by the way. These were first half statistics. And that's why I was telling you it was a game of two halves. Duels won were 48 compared to Arsenal's 52%. 5 corners versus 0 for Liverpool. That's only the first half, So, like I said, a game of two halves. Arsenal dominated the first half. Liverpool dominated the second, and they stole everything all within that one moment, and that one key moment decided the game, and Arsenal ended up on the losing side. Nothing more, nothing less. It was as simple as that, It was as simple as that. I'm trying to find the full-time statistics as per the Premier League. Let me see if I can find them somewhere. Of course, now there were a couple of moments. Eze's call for a penalty. I mean, that was a bit, I don't want to call it a 50-50, but I didn't think there was enough in that for him to ask for a penalty. Maybe what should have been reviewed a little bit more was that potential handball from Dominic Szoboszlai, although it was just that the ball had hit his upper shoulder as opposed to the upper arm. Again, a bit subjective in that regard. So, in that sense, but it is what it is. It is what it is. Anyway, I can't find those Premier League statistics on their timeline. But if anything, if there's anything, let's use those of the live score predictions. Sorry, statistics from yesterday, and we see what the overall was in that game between Arsenal and Liverpool. So when it came to overall possession, Arsenal had 47% compared to Liverpool's 53%. Majority of that coming in the second half. Shots on target were 3 for Liverpool versus Arsenal's 1. I think today called Chiesa had an attempt, a couple of those, and Cody Gakpo off target were 2 to 3. Blocked shots were 4 to 7. That's between Liverpool and Arsenal. Corner, Arsenal had 3 crosses, Liverpool had 1. Corner kicks, Arsenal had 8 versus Liverpool's 3. But like I said, the game was determined by one key moment, and that's what won the game really on the day. Anyways, so let's get to look at what else there is in as far as the latest transfer gossip and speculation is concerned, as compiled by BBC Sport all this beautiful morning. Expect plenty of transfer gossip throughout the course of today. Expect more of that because it's the deadline day. There will be a lot of news. I do not know if we'll be able to digest it all, but given that we are going into the international break, I think we will find time and discuss it all eventually. We'll find time and discuss it all eventually. But yeah, a lot of things are happening. So Aston Villa have held talks with Manchester United over Jadon Sancho that we discussed. While I told you about Aston Villa's interest in Royal Antwerp with Belgian goalkeeper Senne Lammens, Bayern Munich withdrawing from that deal for Nicholas Jackson, while Tottenham Hotspurs are interested in Ademola Lookman as well as Bayern Munich. Galatasaray are in talks with Tottenham to sign Yildiz Bissouma. That's according to the Independent, while AC Milan made an official bid for Liverpool's Joe Gomez. The 28-year-old is of interest to AC Milan. Fenerbahce working to sign Ederson Morales. That one we discussed. The Newcastle want to sign rumors rated £30 million rated striker Atem, 28 on loan. Newcastle remain in the market for another most striker. Then Aston Villa did agree a deal with Aberdeen to sign 17-year-old Scotland youth international midfielder Fletcher Boyd. That's according to Football Insider. So those are some of the hot deals. While Aston Villa are pushing to sign Victor Lindelof on a 2-year contract as a free agent. So things are really, really happening thick and fast. And as far as the transfer window is concerned, it's in overdrive. It's the final day of the transfer window, so expect many, many outgoings. All those negotiations that have been dragging on all summer, I expect them to be either wrapped today or to be brought to a logical conclusion. And we see. Then, okay. So, Rhys Nelson is still in talks with Fulham over a move. However, like I told you, Fulham were prioritizing a move for the Brazilian winger Kevin, as well as what's the other player? Oh, Jesus Christ, I'm forgetting the other winger that they were signing. But also Crystal Palace did inquire about Rhys Nelson. Yes, he's the other Arsenal player that I do expect to move. Alexander Zinchenko is one to watch, like I said. So let's wait and see what deadline day has to offer in regards to transfers. In as far as transfers are concerned. Anyways, that's all that is happening. Theo Walcott, non-Madrid has been very positive. Oh, that was in reference to yesterday's game. Anyways, guys, that's it for me. This beautiful morning, we did discuss majority of the Premier League results. Last night's broadcast, I do not think we should be repeating them. But yeah, Man City being surprised with the 2-1 defeat at Brighton. I do not think it should be much of a surprise. They just did not perform well, especially in that second half. So they considered a penalty that was scored by Milner to restore parity, and then he, to cancel out about Erling Haaland did, and he paid tribute to Diogo Jota as soon as he scored that. And then they considered an 89th minute goal that turned out to be the match winner yesterday. So that means 2 losses after 3 games. This in the start of the season. So let's wait and see. We'll digest that a little more during the course of today. I do expect to do a couple of other broadcasts, at least because of transfers. Otherwise, it's been a pleasure doing this with you. Thank you so much, Habib Nasser, Pedri, and Achu. Thank you all for being part of today's morning's podcast. Florian Vitz, thank you so much. Have yourselves a wonderful rest of the day, a blessed new month, and a blessed new week. Bye-bye for now.